Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another guest. As our ongoing subscribers know, often on this podcast, and I say this every time, but often on this podcast, I'll be sharing ideas, insights, and best practices for networking. Occasionally, however, I'll be interviewing a guest. Interesting people share their story, answer some questions, tell us what they're looking for to grow their professional lives. So if you are interested in being a guest, contact me. Just reach out to me using the email at the end of this program or the one that we provide in the show notes. Today on the program, we have Jill Valdez. Jill is the founder of an organization called Link. Welcome, Jill. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Frank. Thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you for being here. That's as much of a challenge for you to be here. Share for us who you are, what you do. Now, I know people can find you on LinkedIn, and we'll get that information out there. But I always find that LinkedIn, there's lots that's not written on LinkedIn, right? The story. So go for it.
Sure. So I am, like you said, Jill Valdez, and I started Link back in August of 2018. My background is, and it is one of those obscure things not shown on LinkedIn, but my background is that I spent 18 years as an executive pastor, both at a startup and also at an established church. And then in 2016, the church was going through some financial struggles, and I said, hey, I'll go to being a volunteer. You guys can take away my salary. And from that propelled me out into the business world. And what I found was that my skills and what I do was lacking in a lot of companies. It was super surprising to me. So I got to keep doing what I do, which is I love to invest in people and help them give their very best. And then I love to create systems. And so I was able to do that for a company. And I realized that I wanted to be able to do it on a bigger scale. And the way to be able to do that was to start my own agency. So that's what got me to today.
So what sorts of things do you do for a company? I mean, there's obviously a broad range in people serving companies. So
right. Yeah, it can be a very crowded market right now. There's a lot of business consultants. My primary focus is on helping them with developing people, developing their teams. We have seen more and more that there is a focus on employee engagement and in making the workplace a better place for employees. There's a recognition of the fact that without your team, you have no customers. And for so long, it's been, customer first, customer first, customer first. And the employees just kind of had to suck it up and do whatever it was because they were getting a paycheck.
Right.
Right. But, which is, I mean, it's a valid and credible statement, but.
Well, we live in a market right now where it's a seller's market, I guess. The employees, I mean, there are jobs that go unfilled. And so employers are kind of in a different position than where they may have been, let's say 10 years ago, right?
Right, yes.
And I have this conversation with my kids who are all in college, or my oldest is freshly out of college now, and they've got this swagger about them, like, hey, I'm going to go ask for a raise. And it's like, just put your head down and keep working because things are going to change. But for right now, it's not. And so employers need people like you to
help them just, and it doesn't have to cost a company extra money to invest in their team. It's being as simple as making sure that the boss is getting out and walking around and asking how people are doing, or being aware of the personality of their team so that they can adapt their communication, making sure that they're being effective with that. There's a lot of minuscule kind of things that make a significant impact.
Okay. It's interesting. Now, do you go in and actually work face-to-face in the companies, or is this something that is possibly remote as well?
Most of the work is done remotely.
Okay.
I live in a rural town in northern Arizona, so but I also do on-site visits as well. And then, thankfully with technology, with either Zoom or Google Hangouts, then I can have a virtual presence in an office and with a team as well.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, you already mentioned there's a lot of people playing in this space. What sets you apart from competition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what sets me apart is the fact that for 18 years, I learned the skill of how to motivate people to come to work, if you will, without ever having that paycheck as a motivating factor. So I learned people. I learned how to motivate them, how to reward them, how to encourage them and get them excited about coming in and being a part of an organization, even though they weren't getting a paycheck. Okay.
I would imagine in a church, it's heavily dependent upon volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
My office, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm not from Columbus, so I have trouble saying this is where I'm from. It's not home. That's neither here nor there, but this is football country, and they talk about football coaches and wow, what great leaders, look what they can get those kids to do. And it's like, yeah, to a degree that's leadership, but to a degree it's a different sort of a leadership, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a scholarship you're holding over someone's head, right. In the military, they've got a court martial hanging over someone's head. When you in an employment situation, it's different than it is today. Let's say 10 years ago, you had someone's livelihood hanging over their head. And so influencing somebody's behavior is a whole different ballgame. But when you're dealing with volunteers, you've got to get them. It's harder. It's
yeah.
So that's good. So that was a great training ground for you then.
It was a fantastic training ground. Yeah. Because now I understand that people will do things mm-hmm. when it lines up with their passion and lines up with their purpose. And that you can ask them to do even more than what you might initially expect that you can ask them to do. When I first started and I was working with volunteers, I was always hesitant to ask them to kind of go that extra mile or get some extra training or even having standards right. of what the job should be. But I found that as I learned that they loved what they were doing and I could match that with the vision of what we as the church were doing, then I could put those things in place. And they willingly said, oh, you want me to get better at this? Okay, I'll do that. I'll try that new thing. As long as you keep aligning the two things.
Right. Well, I would imagine people, and this starts with, this is nothing new. It starts with kids. We want structure.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we have freedom, right? Everybody says that, I want freedom, but to a degree, we want structure too.
Absolutely.
There's some comfort in that. And there's something odd about it. I guess okay, you can put your foot down at any point, but I want you to do this. Okay, as long as I can put my foot down, I'm willing to do it. Right. Sort of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Setbacks. I mean, I know this is relatively new.
Yeah. Yeah, setbacks. It is new, but like if I had to say, so I started this in August. I was all gung-ho. I was super excited. I'm like, yes, I'm finally going to be doing this
right.
on a big scale, right? And And what I learned is that I have no clue how to market.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest setback, was nobody knew who I was. I was playing around a little bit with Facebook and ads and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't productive at all because I didn't know what I was doing. And in December, I was like, this is just never going to happen. And so I kind of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to have to find a job, and I was always going to have to work another job, and this was just going to be a side gig. But then I clicked on one of those ads on Facebook that was targeted just for me, and started a relationship with a coach who coaches other coaches and other consultants, and took a lot of his advice and started implementing it. And then in January, I purchased his program and started implementing what he taught me, and it made all the difference. It was night and day.
You want to give a shout out? Are you holding them are you keeping them for yourself?
No. His name is Luke Charlton.
Okay.
And he's based in Australia.
Okay.
So it's really fun because he talks about in his phone calls and on his videos, he's like, so if you're not getting leads, something's wrong with your offer. And so he'll tell me, it's your offer. I'm like, it's not my offer.
Yeah. Well, your experience, I think, is no different than lots of people who go into business. I share the story. When I was an attorney, I worked for a firm, and when I went into private practice, I tell people that the funny thing that happened was that nothing happened.
Yeah.
I was very good at my craft, being an attorney, taxes. I had no clue how to get clients. And when you work in a big firm, it's just kind of handed to you. And it doesn't work that way. And that's my story. And you have a similar story. And the plumber has a story. The guy who's gone on, geez, I've been plumbing for 10 years. I get it. I'm licensed. I know how to do this. I've got a truck. I've got all the tools.
Yeah.
Getting the clients.
Exactly.
And so it's, I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge for us all. What do you love most about this?
Oh, I love seeing people's lives changed. Like I have a couple of clients. I have this one client, and pretty much their entire staff, as I was doing interviews with them, their entire staff was getting ready to quit because the manager was not a good person.
Right.
And I came in and been working with them and providing my services, and they're getting it and they're implementing it. And you can see the change in the team. You can see that they're less hesitant to come into work. They're working at feeling like, okay, this is really going to stick. And so they're excited, getting more excited to come into the office. And she's grown so much, the manager. And so for me, that's what it's all about, is seeing people implement what we talk about and then seeing the positive impact that it makes for them.
Well, that's good. I think the money for all of us is just kind of a byproduct, because you got to live, right? We all have to.
Yes.
But it's knowing that you have value to offer the world. There's something there. There's something meaningful. That's awesome. That's awesome. Where do you see this 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I would like to see it as more of a small business with definitely a marketer on staff.
Okay.
And then I'd like to bring some people on. I'd like to have a couple of team members for myself to train them to learn what I know, and be able to grow and make a bigger impact. Companies are always going to need to know how to treat other people, whether it be treating clients, whether it be treating team members, whether it be treating board members, investors, whatever. They're always going to struggle. There's always going to be that struggle.
Right.
And so to be able to make a big impact, I would love to see that happen in 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know that there'll ever be a shortage of potential work for you, because I think everybody finds themselves in a similar situation to us. For example, the great salesperson all of a sudden finds themselves a sales manager, and that's a whole different role. And a lot of it's dealing with people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's
and
such a great point.
then different people. I find that in my organization that, people are like, well, mortgage lenders are all like this. No, they're not. Those two you ran into were like that. Yes. Right.
Right.
That's a sample size of two.
Yeah.
When you start looking at a larger sample size, it might be totally different than that. And so it's, you'll probably start getting repeat business. You'll people who have hired you and say, okay, Jill, you know what? It's working great, but I've got Bob on staff. I always pick on Bob. I don't know who he is, but we got Bob now, and he's got a totally different persona, and
Right.
the things you're talking about aren't as effective for whatever reason.
Sure.
Bob's got a military background, or Bob's, whatever.
Yeah.
But I am of the firm belief that everybody is motivatable somehow, some way, and it's not, it's not money per se.
Yep. Oh, totally. My degree is in psychology, so of course, you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And the money is just a means to an end.
Right.
So absolutely, yeah. Everybody can be motivated and has needs that they have to have fulfilled, no matter who they are.
What book, Fact or Fiction? Easy for me to say. What book, Fact or Fiction, has been most helpful to you? I mean, is there something that you're kind of your go-to, or a business book, or is it maybe a textbook, or is there? I guess do you read? No.
Oh, I love to read. I am a voracious reader.
Well, and that creates the problem. If I always joke about this, but if I ask the question and somebody knows right away what the book is, it's like, okay, maybe they don't read a lot. Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough if you've got a whole, I'm the same way. I read a lot. And so when that question, okay, well, it depends on the topic. But,
right.
Certainly for your business, has there been something that's been helpful that you would recommend?
Probably as far as from a business perspective,
sure.
The book that has most impacted me, that I go back to over and over again, is John Maxwell's Winning with People.
Good. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, anything John Maxwell is good.
Right. Yeah.
No, but that is a good good book. That's a very good book. That's an awesome one. What would be a good referral for you?
A great referral is probably a small to mid-sized business person. So anywhere from like 5 to 30 employees, that they're at the company and they have this role that puts them as a manager. And similar to what we've talked about, they're really good at managing maybe a service, but they're struggling with the team.
Gotcha.
And it's not their passion, and it's not even really truly within their job description. It's only fallen on their plate because of the position that they're in the company.
Well, here's a question, kind of off the wall, or maybe not. Bob, the employee, back to Bob, is listening, and he's like, "Oh my God, that describes my manager." But my manager, we're always last to see our faults, right?
Right.
How would you coach Bob on, okay, how do we get you in front of, how do we get Bob to get you in front of, to refer you, or how does that conversation look?
Yeah, that's a great question. If Bob, the employee, is listening and he knows that he wants me to come in and talk to his manager, my suggestion is to to go to the manager and say, I listen to these podcasts. I'm always working at getting better. And I heard this podcast and I heard about this person who helps businesses. Not necessarily saying helps managers.
Right.
Taking away that personalness of making it come across like, oh, you're a bad manager, so you need this. But hey, maybe this is something that we want to explore, of bringing her in so that we can keep developing as a company.
No, that's good. No, I like that. I like that. All right, here's the big question, probably the most important question. Well, they're all important, but what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
That's my favorite question.
Well, I know. And we'll put it in the show notes, but I certainly want to make sure that that we cover it.
Yeah. So the best way for people to get a hold of me is to get their phone, open up their text messaging app, and text the word link, that's LINK, to 31996.
Okay.
So that's text the word link to 31996. And then I immediately get that text message and we can start a conversation.
Okay. Well, I've never heard that one as far as an approach. That is unique. It probably works. It probably is. It's very simple. Yeah. It's very simple.
What I've found with podcasts is most people are listening to their podcasts on their phone while they're either driving, or like I listen to it when I'm on the treadmill. And so then to just take out my phone, turn it sideways, open the app and send that out, it's just right there. So it's convenient. No,
that makes a whole lot of sense. It does. I mean, I'm not disparaging anybody who's been on the program before, but here's my web address. It looks like the national debt figure, blah, 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 blah. And I try and put them in the show notes, but this really makes it easy. And we will get this in the show notes as well. Well, Jill, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Jill,
my pleasure. It's been great. Sorry.
Great. No, that's okay. Jill Valdez, founder of Link. Contact her, text her, or not, I guess. Send the word link to the short code that we'll put in the show notes. One more time, what is it?
31996.
Okay, link to 31996.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.